All right, welcome back, guys. So right now I have a VS Code editor open where I opened a folder called eCommerce mini course, and then in here is where I'm going to build out this project. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a separate folder for my backend and for my front end. So I'm going to start off by making a backend folder. Then for my front end folder, I'm actually going to have create React app make this. So I'm going to open up my terminal. So right now I see this backend folder. I'm going to run the command npx create-react-app, and then the name of the app, which I'm going to call front end. And then npx is just going to give me the latest version of React. So I'm going to run that. And then while that's going on, I'm going to open up another terminal where I'm going to navigate into my backend. And then I'm going to start to set up some stuff here. So first thing I'm going to do is create a virtual environment. So I can do that with Python 3-m venv and then venv. Also, let me zoom in just a bit. That way things are nice and clear. So I'm going to click enter to this. So right now that's going to create this venv folder inside of my backend. So it's right over here. Now I can activate this virtual environment with source venv bin activate. And then if you're on Windows, you'll do \venv /scripts \activate. And now that I have my virtual environment activated, now when I run commands in here, so commands such as installing Python dependencies, they're not going to be installed on my global system, but instead in this virtual environment. And then right now in this virtual environment, because I use Python 3 to activate it, or rather to create it, now if I do Python -- version, my version of Python is 3.9.6. So now I'm going to install some dependencies here. So I'm going to do pip install Django. I need Django REST framework for the backend API. And then I need PSYCOPG2. This is going to be for communication with my PostgreSQL server. I need Django-cores-headers. This is going to give me cores origin policies to allow my front end running on port 3000 to communicate with my backend running on port 8000. This is going to make development much easier. And then finally, the last thing I want is Braintree. So I'm going to click enter and let these packages install. And then we can check out the status of our front end. So it looks like everything installed here. So now I can clear things up. And then as for packages I want in my front end, so first I need to navigate in my front end. And now that I'm in my front end, some packages I want are npm install. I want Axios. This is what I'm going to use to make my API requests. I want Braintree web drop in React. This is going to give me that drop in UI component from Braintree. And then I want React helmet. This is something that'll help me make meta tags and title tags inside of my different pages. And then the last thing I'm going to need is React loader spinner. This is just a nice looking spinner that I can use. So that way when something is loading, I can show this instead of a button. So I'm going to click enter to that and let these packages install. So that finished up installing for us. So I'm just going to clear and then go back to my backend terminal. So everything in here ended up installing. So now what I'm going to do is create my project. So I'm going to do Django-admin start project, and then the name of the project, which I'm going to call mini shop, and then a dot. And then I'm actually going to do mini_shop. So I'm going to click enter to that. That's going to create my Django project. So now I'm going to have this virtual environment, the mini shop project, and a manage.py. So now I'm going to go into the mini shop settings and then adjust some things here. I'm going to close up this terminal for now to have a little more space. And then right now with the latest version of Django, it doesn't come with an OS import by default. So I'm just going to add that because I will need that. And then I'm going to go down to my installed apps. Right below these static files, I'm going to add cores headers. And I'm also going to add REST framework. And then I'm going to go to my middleware and add that cores middleware. So I'm going to do that right below the session middleware. So it's going to be cores headers dot middleware dot cores middleware. So just like that. And then I'm going to go set up my database. So right now it's using SQLite 3. I want to use PostgreSQL. So if you have Postgre app, if you're using Mac, then you can open it this way. If you're on Windows, then you're going to want to open through a terminal. And you can do that with psql-u postgres. And then that way you can get this session here. So I'm going to quit out of this and I'm going to do it the Mac way. So I'm going to double click on this PostgreSQL and that'll also open this shell for me. So right now I'm inside of PostgreSQL. Then I can do create database. Create database. I'm going to call it mini shop. I'm going to set the owner to Postgres and then put a semicolon. Click enter, that'll create the database. And then you can also set a password with \password, click enter. And then you can set your password. I already have a password that I use, so I'm gonna do \q to quit out of this. And there we go, my database is created. Now let's hook it up. So here instead of SQLite 3, I'm gonna do PostgreSQL. And then for the name, it's gonna be the name of the database, which is Minishop. Gonna have the password. Actually, I'm gonna do user first. So user, which is gonna be Postgres. Gonna have the password, which is gonna be password123 in my case. Here you put whatever password you used, and then I'll have the host, which is localhost. And that'll now hook up the database. Then I'm gonna go down, and then below this static URL, I'm gonna add some additional static settings. So I'm gonna do static files _dirs, which is gonna be a list. And then in here, I'm gonna have os.path.join base directory, and then build/static. So in the front end, when we create a production build folder, it's gonna have a static folder inside of there, and we wanna collect those static files. So that's what this is gonna help us do. And then the next thing we want is the static root, which is gonna be os.path.join base directory static. So when we do a collect static, what's gonna happen is we're gonna have a static folder inside of this backend. It's gonna collect the static files from our production build folder as well. And then you can also access the static files through the static URL, which is gonna be /static/. So that's what this here is doing. Then I'm gonna set up my cores allowed origins. And then the origins I want to allow are HTTP localhost 3000. So this way, our React front end, when it's running in development mode, can make requests to this backend. Then also when we're using Next.js, the Next.js is gonna have to run on a different port. And so this right here is gonna also allow that to make requests to this Django backend. Now, another thing I want is to put in my Braintree credentials. So in order to do that, you need to set up a Braintree account. So back inside of here in my browser, you can search for Braintree, and then you can go to braintreepayments.com. Then you'll click on this login, and then here in the looking for sandbox section, if you didn't set up an account, you're gonna click on the sign up and set an account up. And then once you have that, you can log in. It's not very difficult to set it up. So I'm gonna log in with my username and password. And then what you're gonna do is you're gonna go to here and then API, and then you can find your credentials. So you can find your public key, your private key, and then your merchant ID, and then also the environment. So now back in my code, what I'm gonna do is right over here, I'm gonna do Braintree merchant ID. It's gonna be a setting to hold that merchant ID value. I'm gonna have Braintree public key. And then I'm gonna have Braintree private key. And then I'm gonna go back to Braintree, and I'm just gonna grab those values. So I'm gonna grab the merchant ID. I'm gonna plug that in here. I'm gonna find my public key, copy that, plug it in the public key section, and then I'm gonna view my private key. I'm gonna copy it, go back, and paste it in here. And I'm gonna save that. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create an app which is gonna manage all my payment-based logic. And then in particular, I'm gonna need logic for generating the Braintree token and for processing a payment. So I'm gonna open up my terminal. I'm gonna do Python manage.py. So right now I no longer have to do this Django-admin because right now I have this manage.py that I can use instead. I can do start app, and then I'm gonna call this payment. I'm gonna click enter. That's gonna create my app. So there it is. And then I can open up my views, start configuring this a bit. And then what I'm gonna do is from Django.conf, I'm gonna import settings. That way I can bring in those Braintree settings. I'm gonna import Braintree. And then for now, I'm not gonna implement these views. I just wanna show you the logic for how you can set up the gateway. So you can do gateway, which is gonna be our variable, which I can set to Braintree gateway. And then I can do Braintree.configuration. And then I can do Braintree.environment.sandbox. This is going to be the sandbox environment. Then I can do merchant ID, which is going to be settings.braintree merchant ID. And then this should say merchant ID. There you go. And then you're going to have your public key, which is going to be settings.braintree public key. And then finally the private key, which is going to be settings.braintree private key. So now with this, we can do things like generating the token and creating customers, creating payment methods, addresses, transactions, all that stuff we can now do because we have this. So I just want to show you how to do this. We're going to come back to this a little later. For now, I want to go back to React and do some initial setup in there. So I'm going to close up all this stuff, open up my front end, open up my source, and then I just want to remove everything that's inside of here except for this index.js. So I'm going to click on all of these, and I'm just going to delete them all. And then this index.js, I'm going to remove this here. I'm going to remove this here. I'm going to remove this CSS. And there we go. This is what it's going to look like. So I can save that. I can recreate my app.js. And then I also just remembered, so in this app.js, I'm going to create some routes with React Router DOM. So actually what I need to do is go into my front end terminal. So right now I'm navigated inside of my front end folder. And I need to install another package, which is going to be React Router DOM. So I just want to make sure I have that so I can create my different routes. So we have routing. So that finished up. And then I'm going to import React from React. I'm going to have const app. I'm just going to return some JSX, which then I'm going to do a default export for my app. And then this app, I'm going to wrap inside of a router. So I'm going to import browser router from React Router DOM. And then I don't like the name browser router, so I'm going to refer to this as router. Then inside of here, I'm going to do router. And then I'm going to have my different routes. So another thing I have to bring in is route. And then here I'm going to create my different routes, which are going to load my different pages. So what I'm going to do is inside of the source, create another folder called containers. And this is where we're going to have my different pages. I'm also going to have one for components, if I create different components that I can use in my pages. And then for these containers, I'm going to have three different ones. I'm going to have a home.js. This is going to be for my home page. I'm going to have a checkout.js. This is going to be for my checkout page. And I'm going to have a thank you.js, which is going to be for my thank you page. So I'm just going to have some boilerplate for this. So if you have that React snippets extension with VS Code, you can do RAFC and then click tab, and that'll just do a little shortcut here. Now, I personally don't like the exact way that it does it here, so I'm going to make a few changes. So I'm going to add that. I'm going to remove this export, and then instead do an export default home. And I'm going to use a lowercase here. And then instead of these curly braces, I'm going to have round parentheses, where I'm going to return a div. And then in this div, I'm going to have an h1, which is just going to say homepage. So just like that. And then I'm going to copy this. I'm going to go to my checkout. I'm going to paste it here. And then I'm just going to make this relevant for the checkout. So I'm going to select these, change it to checkout, and just put a capital C here. Save that. There we go. And then same thing in my thank you page. I'm going to paste here, select this home part, do a Command D twice, change this to be thank you, and then change this to be thank you page. And there you go. This is just going to be some default boilerplate just so that we have these pages. So I'm going to close these up, go back inside of my app, and create some routes to handle these. So first I need to actually import them. So I'm going to import home from containers/home. I'm going to copy down twice with Shift Option down key. And then I'm going to select this home part with Command D so I can easily bring in my checkout. And I'm going to do the same thing here so I can easily bring in my thank you. And now let's create the routes. So I'm going to have a route here where it's going to be a path to slash, where the component is going to be my home component. And then I'm going to have two more routes. One's going to be for my checkout. One's going to be for my thank you page. And then this one here is going to load up my checkout page. This one's going to load my thank you page. And there we go. Now let's run this front end and see if things are working so far. So I'm going to clear this up, do an npm run start. That's going to start my front end. I'm going to go to my browser, and then that should load up localhost 3000 in here. And then we'll see what we have so far. So we have the home page. if I go to /checkout, now we show both of these components. And the reason why we're showing both is because /checkout contains slash and it contains /checkout. So we show both of these. So if we want this to match exactly, then we have to put this exact here. Now in that case, we're only going to see the checkout. And then we can take a look at the thank you as well. And there's our thank you page. So there we are. I'm going to close up this terminal. And then the next thing I want to do is bring in Bootstrap inside of here. So I'm going to go to Bootstrap. So I already searched it inside of here. You can click on the getbootstrap.com, get started, and then you can have the CSS and the JavaScript bundle. So I'm going to copy this, go back to my React app, open up my public index.html, and I can just bring that in here. And then I'm just going to fix this up a little by having it on separate lines. So there's this one, and then I'm also going to bring in the JavaScript bundle. I'm going to go back, and then right below here I could paste that. And there we are. Just like that, we can easily have Bootstrap inside of our application. So I'm going to close this up. And then the next thing I want to do is create a navbar. So I'm going to do that inside of my components folder. So I'm going to do navbar.js. Then I'm going to go back to Bootstrap, and I'm going to search for a navbar. And then here, I'm going to scroll down until I find one that I like. And then I think this one right here is going to be nice. We can tweak that. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this code. I'm going to go back to my code editor. I'm going to import React from React. I'm going to do const navbar. Just going to return some JSX, which is going to be this that I copied. And then I'm going to do a default export. And then we have to edit this. So right now, what I want to do is I want to import link and navlink, which is going to come from React Router DOM. So navlink is nice because it's going to add an active class to the link if it matches the route. So this will just add some styling on the link in the navbar if we're on that same page. And then link just won't do that. So that's the only difference between these two. Then I'm going to select this class part. I'm going to select all of these classes. I'm going to click write. And then add in name so that we have class name instead of class. And then I'm also going to change all these double quotes to be single quotes instead, just because I like things being in single quotes. So I'm going to change that. Then I'm going to fix up some of this indenting. All right, and then I'm going to put this on separate lines here. So this is going to be that button when we have a small screen. And then this right here, I'm going to have as the link, because this right here, it's just going to say mini shop. And then this right here, I don't want it to have that active class when we're on the home page. And then I'm going to do 2 equals slash. So we can take a look at how things look right now. Oh yeah, so I actually have to have my navbar shown up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my source, create a higher order components folder where I'm going to create a layout.js. And then here I'm going to import React and fragment, which is going to come from React. I'm going to do const layout, which is going to return some JSX. I'm going to do a default export for my layout. And then I'm going to have my fragment. And then between here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have my navbar, which I have to import. So there we are. And then I'm also going to have my actual page, which is going to come from this children prop. So we're going to see that in a moment. So I'm going to have a div where I pass in this children. And then here I'm going to have a class name of container just to have a little bit of margin on the left and the right. And then another thing I want to do is also bring in that helmet, which is going to come from React helmet. Then I'm going to use that here. And then that way I can have a title as well as a meta tag. And then on each page, I'm going to use this layout. And then on each page, I can pass a title and content. Then here, I can have the title, which is going to be mini shop, and then the title. So it can be something like home or checkout or thank you. And then I'm going to have the meta tag, which is going to be name of description, where the content is going to be whatever content we pass to that. And there we are. So this is going to be our layout higher order component. So that's why I named this as HOCS, because it just wraps things. And then also this right here is not spelled right inside of here. So I'm going to save that now. And then inside of my pages, what I can do now, if I open them up, is I can import that layout. And then instead of a div, I can have this layout. And then I can pass a title. So this one's going to be something like homepage, or maybe just home. And I can have the content, which I'm just going to leave empty, just to not spend time on that. And then that's all I need. And then the children's going to be whatever's between here. So I'm just going to copy this import, go to my checkout, paste it in here, use layout here, pass the title, which is going to be checkout. And then the content, I'll just leave empty. But for good SEO, you'd want to actually put some content in here. I'm going to copy this layout again and do the same thing in my thank you page. And then layout's going to be right here. Title's going to be thank you. And content, I'll just leave empty. So there we are. So I'm going to have for my pages right now. And now because in this layout.js, because I brought in this nav bar, now what we're going to see is our nav bar, as well as our page that's rendered. So right now I'm on the thank you page. If I click on this, I'll go to the home page. Now let's go fix up that nav bar. So over here, I'm going to start off with this one. So instead of the A tag, I'm going to have a nav link. I'm going to remove this stuff here. I'm going to have a 2, which is going to go to slash. And then here I have to have the exact prop like I did inside of that app.js. And that way this has to match exactly for this to get the active class. And then I can just remove the active class from here because the nav link's going to handle that for me. And then I'm just going to have this on separate lines. I'm going to delete these ones. I'm going to copy this. And then this one's just going to be for my checkout. Then I don't need this exact in this case. And then I can pass in checkout. So that's going to be the complete nav bar. So now we have this instead where I can navigate between these two pages. And then the thank you page we're going to go to when we have a successful transaction. And then the last thing I'm going to do in this video is just go to this index.js. And now because I have React helmet handling this title, I don't need this here. And then there's also a meta tag in here, this one right over here, that says website created using create React app. I don't need this one either, because again, we have React helmet that's going to handle that for us. So there we are. I'm going to put a little pause in this video, and then in the next video, we're going to start putting together that checkout form. So I'll see you guys there.